for inviting us to be together tonight. Want to thank those that are here from the Idaho GOP, Tom Luna, Amos Rothstein, Tyler Kelly from Boise, and Victor Miller from Ada County Republicans. And also it's really special for me to have my husband Jim McGeachin with me here tonight. So thanks for being here. Kootenai County, you have been so great, and I really appreciate the love and support that you've always shown to me. My first year after being elected lieutenant governor, when the fake news was trying to paint me as being a racist, because I happened to be standing next to a person who was displaying what some people call a controversial hand sign. Alva, would you please show the people what this controversial hand sign is? So thank you so much for all the support that you and love that you've always shown to me. That means so much to me. Alva, you can go to the next slide too. You know, a little over a year ago today, I was traveling around this part of the state, going to our Lincoln Bankets all over the state, and my husband Jimmy was out of the country. He didn't know if he was going to get back into the country. Our kids, Liza and James, were calling me and they were saying, "Mom, we can't get toilet paper at the store, there's no hand sanitizer on the shelf." And so it's like, that was the time that the life that we knew it just started falling down all around us. On March 25th, 2020, Governor Little declared an extreme emergency in our state with an accompanying public health order. This public health order directed all individuals, including healthy people, to stay at home. The public health order went out and defined which businesses were essential and which businesses were non-essential. And if you were a non-essential business, then you had to cease all of your operations. This public health order also said that we as people had to cease all of our social gatherings, even when we were meeting for spiritual purposes. This emergency declaration led to widespread unemployment, anger, and frustration by the people of Idaho. In March of 2020, Idaho went from a record low unemployment rate of 2.5%, and within 1 month, we had reached an unemployment rate of 11.8% in our state. Our Department of Labor was flooded with unemployment claims, and people all over the state had gone weeks, 13, 15 weeks, with no money to put food on their table because of this backlog on the claims. And in December of 2020, all businesses received a letter from the Department of Labor saying that Idaho had paid out over $1 billion in benefits, and that encouraged businesses across the state to get ready for a tax increase in the unemployment insurance rate for 2022. Last year, the state of Idaho, we participated in the enhanced federal unemployment match rate, and we're set to participate in this again. So what that means, the average payment on the state level is $300 a week, coupled by the $300 enhanced federal unemployment. It's $600 a week, which equals $15 an hour that people are earning for doing nothing. Now this is a policy decision. We can either do that or we don't have to. But we can, it's a policy decision of whether we want to do this or not. Is this what we want? Do we want to foster this kind of dependency on our government? No. A better solution would be not to participate in the extension of the enhanced federal employment, lift all restrictions, and get people back to work to help increase the productivity of our state. We could get all these people out there working and building houses, which we have such a housing shortage is driving up the price of houses. So the people of Idaho pleaded with their state senators to get involved and to help end this emergency declaration and to restore their rights. On August 24, 2020, a special session of the legislature was convened to address COVID-19 liability and election law. And both chambers of the legislature, the House and the Senate, drafted resolutions, and they made promises to the people of Idaho. Promises that they would work to restore the constitutional balance of power between the legislative and the executive branch of government. They would provide a mechanism that the legislature could call itself back into session, and that they would work to restore the rights of Idahoans to provide for their families and to protect our right to worship freely. In January 2021, this year, the regular session of the legislature convened and began to work to fulfill the promises that were made to the people. As the session progressed, lawmakers grew restless at the lack of progress on the important bills. Bills were not given hearings, or were being held by committee chairs. Bills were being read across the floor in full in the House because of a lack of communication and progress on emergency orders. Bills which had passed a supermajority in one chamber were not being advanced in the other chamber. A better solution would have been for our state leaders to work together in the 4 months from August to January to craft legislation which would be supported by both chambers and being the first bills to be presented in the regular session and signed into law. On January 22nd, some in power blasted the legislature for their efforts, saying that what they were doing was harmful to our people and wrong for Idaho. What was at stake was the money that was due to come through the state of Idaho in this FEMA emergency agreement. This agreement enables the state of Idaho to access federal dollars. The agreement was voluntarily signed by the governor in April of 2020. And yes, absolutely, it is an option for us to keep this FEMA agreement in place. But there are costs to this, and I want to share what some of those costs are. Written into this agreement, it says that if the state accepts federal assistance, the state will provide without cost to the United States all lands, easements, and rights of ways necessary to accomplish the approved work. It also says that the state will hold and save the United States free from damages due to the requested work and will indemnify the federal government against any claims arising from this work. Additionally, this agreement says when it comes to construction projects, it says that the state must make sure that all applicable federal, state, and local permits comply with federal law as it relates to the National Environmental Policy Act, the Endangered Species Act, and all other applicable environmental laws and executive orders. We have a new administration that in the past 3 months has issued 50 executive orders that undoes everything that President Trump put into place. And one of those that is the Biden administration is trying to put into place is what is called Waters of the United States, which says through an EPA rule, if you have one little puddle of water in your driveway, EPA can come in and manage that. This will be devastating to our agricultural community in Idaho. So, a better solution, though. A better solution would be to take some of that $600 million excess we have in our budget and use that money for any additional COVID-19 support or relief and do it the Idaho way. The next slide, on March 6th of 2021, in communities across the state, Idahoans convened to protest the lack of progress in the legislature. At this time, 8 weeks into the session, about at least 40 bills that were dealing with these promises that were made to the people. At this time, only 2 had made it to the desk and signed into law. My attendance at the rally that day at the Capitol was to highlight legislation that was working its way through Congress and how it would affect Idaho election law. H.R. 1 is an 800-page bill which would implement the worst changes that we saw in election rules that occurred during the 2020 election season. It will federalize election law in states. It will require states to allow vote trafficking, will require states to restore the ability of felons to vote. It will ban state voter ID laws and will prevent states from verifying the accuracy of their registration rolls. This bill is contrary to the provisions that were approved by an Idaho Citizen Commission on Election Integrity on January the 3rd and was delivered to Congress and read across the desk of Congress. I was shocked to learn about a bill that worked its way through the Senate, that Idaho counties had accepted approximately $500,000 from Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg in 2020. So a better solution will be not to accept any more money from private companies or from the federal government so that we can conduct our own election laws. This slide is a picture of House Resolution 1319, which is a so-called COVID-19 relief bill, which is filled with progressive Democratic initiatives. In this bill, the federal government dictates how the money could be spent by the states. It also interferes with the state's ability to enact tax relief for our citizens. Tonight, I'd like to talk to you about some of the areas of federal overreach that's happening in our state budget right now. A bill that was crafted to help pay for Medicaid expansion, which we were lied to. We were told that Medicaid expansion in Idaho wouldn't cost us anything. Well, there was a bill, a supplemental bill to increase that Medicaid spending by $369 million. And in Idaho, we accepted some of the additional federal money. It's called the increase in the federal match rate. But as a condition of taking that money, we could not kick people off of our Medicaid program, even if they weren't eligible for it, meaning that there were people that were earning too much money and we couldn't kick them off our rolls of Medicaid. In our educational system, comprehensive sex education is being taught in our K-12 public schools. The way our law is right now, it's an opt-out, meaning that parents, if they don't want to participate in it, they can choose to opt out of the program. A bill was being introduced through the legislature this year, which was an opt-in bill, meaning that the parents, the only way they could do it is if the parents said, I want to opt in and I'm going to proactively do that. Yeah. I listened to the testimony in the committee that day, and I heard a 16-year-old girl talking about how we needed this bill, we needed this curriculum in our school, because she knew how to have safe sex with a guy, but she didn't know how to have safe sex with a girl. No. This is a 16-year-old girl in our schools. And she's saying, we need this, our kids need this, and she doesn't realize that she's a minor. We're still trying to comply with the requirements of the federal government on Common Core, which is failing our kids. Here's an idea. Let's teach our kids how to set a budget. Let's teach them how to reconcile a business checking account. Or how to invest money and make money work for you instead of against you. We could do this, we could have these standards, and then we could send them to Congress, and we could teach Congress a thing or two. Critical race agenda is being taught in our institutions of higher learning. At BSU, students learn about ethics and diversity according to Harry Potter and the Lion King. I'm not kidding you, I've read the description of the course. They are taught to question the American dream, asking whether the dream is attainable and equitable for all, or is it instead simply an ideal, a fantasy, or a nightmare? Or we could lead out like Florida Governor DeSantis, who stated, teaching our kids to hate their country and to hate each other is not worth 1 red cent of taxpayer money.
That's right.
As this federal control grows, our state sovereignty shrinks. Although you can go to the next slide. Here we are celebrating Lincoln Day, our beloved President, Abraham Lincoln, who freed the slaves and is the father of our party. At this time that we're celebrating our beloved president, a BLM activist was defacing his statue in Boise. Just a few days ago, an arrest was made of the leader of the local BLM Boise, and it was reported and discovered that he was recently a professor at Boise State University who studied critical race theory. Alva, you can go to the next slide. Democrats find that it's okay to put a fence around themselves, but they refuse to put a fence around our country. Today, we have the worst crisis on our southern borders than we've had in over 20 years. And there are some bills that are working their way to Idaho, the Farm Worker Protection Act, which will provide a path of citizenship. And there was a Senate bill that was crafted right before recess, which will study, it's an interim committee to study whether or not we want to give license, driver's license to these individuals. Alva, thank you. Now there are some in power that do not believe that our people are still experiencing restrictions on their freedoms. This photograph is a picture of a sticker that was created by 2 teens in Moscow, Idaho. It's in Soviet Moscow, enforced because we care. These 2 young men in Moscow placed, you go to the next slide, Ella, placed a sticker on city poles around Moscow. And you can see that there were a lot of other stickers that were put on the pole, but who was arrested? It was these young men that were arrested. And between the 2 of them, they face 13 misdemeanor charges with 6 months jail time for each one of these. And the 18-year-old student also happened to be the valedictorian at his school. Next slide is a picture of the hottest selling t-shirt in Boise, Idaho. Mayor McLean is trying to turn Boise into the next Portland or Seattle. Some businesses are still shut down and restricted in downtown Boise. The next slide is a picture. On the day that the legislature went to recess, there were some Idaho citizens that gathered at the Capitol to support our right to keep and bear arms. And I took a picture of them. They're in light of all the things that are happening on the national level, this radical left agenda to confiscate our guns, require registration, and ban our modern day sporting guns. This picture has had over 190,000 views on my social media page, and I'm hoping that after the recess, when the legislative body goes back, that they will bring attention to this bill to work to give additional support to the laws that we have to protect our Second Amendment right. So I've talked about some things that are of concern, but I want to leave you tonight with a positive note, and that is that I have seen more than ever before the level of citizen engagement and activism that I have not seen in a long time. Alva, you can go to the next slide. We started in the legislature, we started hosting these weekly sessions called Capital Clarity. We had 120 people come out, and we were just trying to help people understand the process, understand bills, and how to have their voice be heard. And thousands of views all across the state. When I went to Wallace last night and then here tonight, people are telling me that they watched this online. We had a doctor one day that spoke about the COVID situation and what we can do as citizens to protect ourselves and keep ourselves healthy. That one video itself has had over 145,000 views. Now, this effort, this isn't about me. This effort, it's about you. You have a voice, and you want to know, you want to hear what's happening in our state government, and you want to know that somebody is listening to you and there's a different voice. So it's because of you that we are successful with this, and because of this, we're also launching a weekly radio program every Thursday at 5 in the Treasure Valley. But this growing activism is the people of Idaho that are fed up with government overreach into our lives. They're fed up with the government taking more money from our hard-earned dollars on frivolous projects like art, city art and park, and county managers. People are fed up with politics as usual. They're ready to stand up and fight, and they're standing up and fighting not a year from now, not 2 years from now, not next week, but today. On every coin, every U.S. coin, are the words liberty and in God we trust. And I want to thank you, Kootenai County. Thank you so much for all that you're doing to continue that fight for liberty. And Kootenai County, my question for you is, will you continue to trust in God and continue that fight for liberty? Intrusive and perverse overreach of the federal government. Will you continue to fight to protect our Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms? And will you continue to fight to protect our freedom of speech and our right to worship freely? There you go. God bless you, Kootenai County. Thank you for all that you do. Let's keep Idaho great.